I sat across from Daniel Reed, in that sterile HR conference room, my resignation letter lying between us like a death certificate. 9 years of my life had led to this exact moment. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across his smug face. I kept my voice steady as I asked the question I'd been dreading for weeks. What about my 401k bonus? The deferred compensation for employees with 5+ years of service. Daniel's eyes went cold. He leaned back in his leather chair like he owned not just the company but the entire world. Maybe he thought he did. You resigned, Grace. You walked away from us. His voice was pure ice, each word carefully chosen to cut. We don't owe you anything. The words hit me like a physical blow. 9 years. 9 years of staying late while others went home to their families. 9 years of covering for incompetent coworkers. 9 years of doing 3 people's jobs without a single complaint. The room suddenly felt smaller, the walls pressing in. That's not how contracts work, Daniel. I earned that money. He actually smiled, a cold, predatory expression that made my skin crawl. You didn't deserve it anyway. Something deep inside me went quiet, not broken, not defeated, just quiet, like a storm gathering itself before it unleashes absolute destruction. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. I just looked him straight in the eye and said, "You're making a mistake." He laughed as I walked out, probably thinking he'd won some kind of victory. He had no idea how catastrophically wrong he was about to be proven. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began. 9 years ago, I walked through the doors of Meridian Industrial Supply with hope blooming in my chest and a fresh business degree clutched in my sweaty palm. I was overqualified for a logistics coordinator position, but the economy was brutal. Recent graduates were fighting over entry-level jobs like dogs over scraps. I needed work, and Meridian seemed like a solid choice. People who stay here don't regret it, my hiring manager told me that first day, his smile warm and genuine. The office smelled like fresh coffee and possibility. Everything seemed achievable, within reach. I believed him completely. God help me. I really believed every word. The benefits package looked incredible on paper. Comprehensive health insurance, generous vacation time, and that beautiful 401k plan with deferred bonuses for loyal long-term employees. After 5 years of dedicated service, you'd receive a substantial chunk of money as a thank you for your commitment. We truly take care of our people here, Daniel had said during my final interview. He was younger then, hungrier, still desperately climbing the corporate ladder one rung at a time. I shook his hand firmly and thought I'd finally found my professional home, a company that genuinely valued hard work, dedication, and unwavering loyalty, a place where I could build something meaningful, something lasting. I was 29 then. Looking back now at 38, I can see how incredibly naive I was. But maybe that's not entirely fair to my younger self. Maybe I was just hopeful. Maybe hope isn't something anyone should ever be ashamed of having. I quickly became the employee who stayed late. Always. Without exception. When impossible deadlines loomed like storm clouds, when computer systems crashed at the worst possible moments, when other people mysteriously called in sick during crucial periods, I was there. I vividly remember one particular Thursday that still haunts me. Sarah from accounting had a genuine family emergency. Mike from shipping was legitimately out with a vicious case of flu. The critical quarterly inventory report was due first thing Friday morning, and our supposedly reliable computer system decided to have a complete nervous breakdown. I stayed until well past midnight, manually cross-referencing thousands of numbers across 3 different complex spreadsheets. My eyes burned from staring at the glowing screen for 14 straight hours. My coffee had gone stone cold sometime around 9 p.m. When I finally finished at 1:47 a.m., I sent the completed report to Daniel with a simple note, all set for tomorrow's meeting. His reply came the next afternoon. Good catch on those discrepancies. Fixed everything just in time. No thank you. No acknowledgement of the 14-hour marathon. No recognition of the sacrifice. Just good catch. Like I'd noticed a typo instead of saving the entire quarterly presentation. This became my standard operating procedure. Other people received promotions to management positions with corner offices. I received more work, more responsibility, more thankless tasks. They called me reliable. They said I was the backbone of the department. What they never said was that reliable people apparently don't deserve raises. Backbones don't earn bonuses, they just get more crushing weight to carry. The first real, undeniable lie came during what should have been my annual performance review. Or rather, the review that mysteriously never materialized. I waited patiently for 3 full months past my hire date anniversary, watching other employees cycle through their evaluations. Finally, I gathered enough courage to ask HR about the delay. "Oh, we're just really backed up this year," Janet from HR said, refusing to meet my questioning eyes. "Budget freezes. You know exactly how it is around here." I nodded politely and smiled that practice smile I'd perfected over the years. I was exceptionally good at nodding and smiling by then, but something felt fundamentally wrong. I started paying closer attention to office patterns. Other people were definitely getting their scheduled reviews. Other people were receiving their promised raises. Just not me. Later, through carefully overheard office gossip, I discovered the devastating truth. Daniel had explicitly instructed HR to skip my review entirely. No review meant no legally required salary increase. It was that brutally simple. He'd effectively stolen an entire year of increased wages from me with one casual instruction: "We'll get to grace next quarter." Next quarter never came. It never even appeared on anyone's calendar. I should have confronted them immediately. Should have demanded answers. Should have pushed back hard against this obvious injustice. But I'd been so thoroughly trained to be the perfect employee, the one who never made waves, never caused problems. I swallowed my growing anger like bitter medicine and kept working. Kept staying late. Kept believing that loyalty would eventually, somehow pay off. The annual company retreat was the moment I finally saw myself through their cruel, dismissive eyes. We traveled to some overpriced resort in the Poconos for mandatory team building. In reality, it was an elaborate excuse for management to play golf and drink expensive alcohol on the company's dime. During the group dinner, I attempted to contribute meaningfully to a conversation about supply chain optimization strategies. It was literally my area of expertise. I knew more about our logistics operations than anyone else in that expensive dining room. "Actually," I said, leaning forward eagerly, "if we adjusted our delivery routes to account for seasonal traffic patterns—" "Grace, Daniel interrupted with an exaggerated wave, like he was shooing away an annoying insect. "We're trying to have fun here. Leave work at work." The entire table erupted in laughter. Everyone laughed like I'd told some hilarious joke instead of offering valuable professional insight. Later that evening, I heard Daniel talking loudly to his golf buddies at the resort bar. "Grace is all numbers, no personality whatsoever. Fantastic worker, don't get me wrong, but not exactly fun at parties." More cruel laughter rippled through their little circle. I forced myself to smile and laugh along from across the crowded room, playing the part of the good sport. Then I quietly excused myself, went upstairs to my lonely room, and cried harder than I had in years. I finally understood the truth. I wasn't a person to them. I was a useful function, a convenient tool that happened to have inconvenient feelings they found annoying. That night, something fundamental changed inside me. A small, hard seed of righteous anger took deep root. I returned home from that humiliating retreat and did something I should have done years earlier. I read my original employment contract. Every single word, every clause, every subsection. There it was, buried deep in Section 12, subsection C. Employees with 5 or more years of continuous service are eligible for deferred 401k bonuses calculated at 2.5% of cumulative base salary contributions. I retrieved my calculator and started crunching numbers. 9 years of faithful contributions. All those unpaid overtime hours and conveniently missed raises. The total was staggering. They owed me $1,847. I carefully printed the contract. I printed every pay stub from 9 years of employment. I printed every piece of relevant documentation I could locate. Then I organized everything methodically in a folder labeled insurance and locked it securely in my desk drawer. I wasn't actively planning anything specific yet, but I was finally learning to think strategically like they did, learning to protect myself from further exploitation. The very next day at work, I casually asked Daniel about the 401k bonuses mentioned in our contracts. Oh, those old clauses? We don't really honor those anymore. Severe budget constraints, you understand completely. He delivered this blatant lie so smoothly, so effortlessly, like he was discussing something as mundane as the weather forecast. I nodded agreeably and smiled. Of course, just curious about the policy. But inside my chest, that seed of anger was growing larger, stronger. They weren't just ignoring me anymore. They were actively, deliberately stealing from me. I'll never forget the sweltering day the warehouse air conditioning system completely died. It was mid-July, 95 degrees outside, and somehow even hotter inside the metal building. Management made the executive decision that emergency repair wasn't worth the expense. We'll fix it first thing tomorrow, Daniel announced casually as he left at noon for his weekly golf game. The warehouse crew was literally dying in the heat, sweating through their uniforms while trying to unload 3 massive trucks worth of heavy industrial equipment. I couldn't just abandon them to suffer. I grabbed every water bottle from the break room refrigerator and spent the entire afternoon helping them manually move inventory. My professional office clothes were completely soaked through with sweat. My carefully styled hair was plastered to my skull, but somehow we managed to get everything done, working together as an actual team. The next morning, Daniel publicly thanked the warehouse manager for keeping operations running smoothly during the equipment malfunction. No mention of my contribution whatsoever. No acknowledgement that I'd spent 4 hours doing back-breaking manual labor because management couldn't be bothered to fix a broken air conditioner. That was the precise moment I realized something crucial. Loyalty only has value when it flows in both directions. They expected absolutely everything from me while giving nothing meaningful back. Not respect, not recognition, not even the money they legally owed me. I started keeping a detailed written list of incidents like this, not for any specific purpose initially, just to remember, just to document the pattern of disrespect. The break room whispers started circulating in October. I wasn't intentionally eavesdropping, but voices carry easily in cheaply constructed office buildings with thin walls. Daniel's been playing serious games with the bonus money, someone said in hushed tones, using it creatively to hit his department profit targets. I froze completely with my coffee cup suspended halfway to my lips. Shh, another voice warned nervously. You don't know that for absolute certain. I know Janet in HR personally. She told me confidentially they've been deferring payments for years now. Makes the quarterly budget numbers look much better on paper. I desperately didn't want to believe such a serious accusation, but I started paying extremely close attention to everyone's benefit statements. Casual questions during lunch breaks became my investigative tool. How's your 401k looking lately? Did you receive your annual bonus this year? The pattern became crystal clear with shocking speed. Long-term employees throughout the company weren't receiving what they were contractually owed. Not just me, dozens of dedicated people. Daniel wasn't just stealing from me personally. He was systematically stealing from everyone. That revelation was when I stopped feeling sorry for myself and started feeling genuinely angry for all of us. I began making careful copies of everything. Benefit statements people carelessly left on the communal printer. Payroll discrepancies I noticed in my daily work. Policy changes that seemed to happen without any official announcement. I wasn't entirely sure what I was going to do with this growing evidence. But I was learning to think like a detective building an airtight case. I spent the next 3 crucial months preparing meticulously. Not emotionally, legally. I downloaded every policy manual onto a personal encrypted hard drive. I took screenshots of the original job postings that explicitly promised benefits we weren't receiving. I kept detailed copies of every email where Daniel or HR made specific promises they had no intention of keeping. I was methodical about this process, quiet and careful. I continued coming in early and staying late like I always had, but now I had a clear purpose beyond simply completing my assigned tasks. I researched labor law extensively during my lunch breaks. I discovered ERISA violations and their serious consequences. I learned that what they were doing wasn't just morally wrong, it was a federal crime. But I didn't want petty revenge, I wanted real justice. There's a significant difference between the two concepts. Revenge is purely emotional, driven by hurt feelings. Justice is methodical, systematic, based on facts and law. I started seriously looking for new employment opportunities, but I was extremely selective. I wanted to leave on my own terms, not theirs. When the perfect opportunity finally presented itself, a position with a direct competitor offering 30% more money and genuine respect, I knew the time had come. I wrote my resignation letter on a quiet Sunday evening. Professional 2 weeks' notice, polite and diplomatically worded. I was going to give them one final chance to do the right thing. And that brought me full circle back to Daniel's office, watching him tell me with complete arrogance that I didn't deserve the money he'd systematically stolen from me. I walked out of that hostile HR meeting without signing a single document. My resignation letter remained on the conference table, but their insulting response was clutched firmly in my hand. "We don't owe you anything. You didn't deserve it." His cruel words echoed in my mind during the drive home, but I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was laser-focused. In my briefcase was a copy of my original employment contract, the one Daniel had boldly pretended didn't exist, the one that clearly, unambiguously stated my legal rights. I had 9 years of meticulously gathered evidence. I had comprehensive documentation of their systematic lies. I had irrefutable proof of a deliberate pattern of theft affecting dozens of innocent employees. Daniel thought he was dismissing some quiet, submissive woman who would disappear and stay permanently silent. He was catastrophically wrong. I wasn't going away quietly. I was going to war. But I was going to fight this battle the absolutely right way. That night, I made a detailed list of phone calls I needed to make, starting with the Department of Labor. The law office was modest but impeccably clean. Michael Santos, labor attorney, looked like he'd witnessed every conceivable type of workplace horror story during his career. I laid out my case methodically and calmly. The original contract, the documented pattern of systematically denied benefits, the clear evidence of systematic theft of employee money. He listened intently without interrupting once. When I finished my presentation, he remained thoughtfully quiet for several long moments. "They violated ERISA," he said finally, his voice serious. "That's federal law. The Department of Labor takes these violations extremely seriously. What exactly does that mean for my case? It means you have a strong legal case, a very strong one. But more importantly, if they're doing this to multiple employees systematically, this could be a much bigger problem for them than they realize." He carefully explained the entire legal process, government investigation procedures, potential comprehensive audits, possible criminal charges if the violations were proven intentional. "This isn't just about recovering your money anymore," he said, leaning forward. "This is about protecting every single employee they've systematically cheated." I signed his retainer agreement that same day. Walking out of his professional office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Real hope. Not the naive hope I'd carried 9 years ago. Educated hope. Hope backed by solid facts and law and the full power of the federal government. Daniel had made a terrible mistake. He'd assumed I was completely powerless. Time to teach him exactly how wrong he was. I spent the entire weekend organizing everything systematically. 9 years of documentation, carefully sorted and labeled and copied in triplicate. Monday morning, I submitted everything to the Department of Labor's Employee Benefit Security Administration. I also sent comprehensive copies to the IRS whistleblower office. As it turns out, when companies steal from employee retirement funds, that's also considered tax fraud. The submission package was 67 pages long. Contracts, emails, payroll records, benefit statements. I included a detailed chronological timeline of every violation I could document with evidence. But I didn't focus solely on my personal situation. I included clear evidence of the systematic denial of benefits to other employees throughout the company. Names, dates, specific amounts owed. Daniel thought he was dealing with one disgruntled former employee. He was about to discover he was facing a comprehensive federal case. I submitted everything anonymously initially. No point in giving them advance warning. Then I started my new job and tried to forget about Meridian Industrial Supply entirely. That peaceful period lasted exactly 12 days. Then the federal government came knocking on their door. The investigation was officially beginning, and Daniel Reed was about to experience the worst year of his professional career. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. My former coworker Lisa texted me urgently. "Grace, you absolutely need to see this. Federal agents are here right now. They're auditing absolutely everything." I felt a powerful thrill of vindication. The Department of Labor had moved much faster than I dared to expect. By Friday morning, the entire office was in complete chaos. Federal agents were systematically interviewing employees, thoroughly reviewing files, legally seizing computers and documents. Daniel was running around frantically like a chicken with its head cut off, desperately trying to control the narrative. "This is just a routine compliance audit," he kept telling everyone who would listen. "Nothing whatsoever to worry about." But it obviously wasn't routine at all. The agents had official search warrants. They were specifically looking for evidence of systematic benefit fraud. I watched from my new office across town as my old workplace completely imploded. Lisa kept me updated through frequent text messages. "They asked about you specifically, wanted to know details about your bonus situation. Daniel's been locked in his office all day with expensive lawyers. HR is frantically shredding documents in the conference room." That last message made me smile with satisfaction. Too late for that desperate measure. I already had copies of absolutely everything. The federal investigation was moving faster than I dared to hope. Within 2 weeks, Daniel was forced to meet with federal compliance officers for formal questioning. According to Lisa's detailed reports, he walked into that crucial meeting completely confident. "This is all a simple misunderstanding," he apparently told them. Then they systematically showed him the evidence, his own incriminating emails, company policy documents he'd personally altered, benefit statements that didn't match what employees were actually receiving, my documentation, all of it, laid out in perfect chronological order. The smug confidence disappeared pretty quickly. "Mr. Reed," the lead federal investigator said, "we have comprehensive evidence that you systematically denied federally protected benefits to dozens of employees over a period of 7 years. This appears to be completely intentional fraud." Daniel tried desperately to blame HR, tried to claim complete ignorance, tried to say it was all some kind of computer error, but the evidence was too clear, too comprehensive, the pattern too obviously deliberate. My paper trail too complete and damning. By the end of that devastating meeting, Daniel Reed wasn't denying the violations anymore. He was asking his lawyers about potential plea bargains. I felt no personal satisfaction in his obvious fear, just profound relief that the truth was finally, officially coming out. Justice isn't about making people suffer unnecessarily. It's about making things right. The breakthrough came when Janet from HR finally cracked under intense federal pressure. She'd been the one dutifully following Daniel's illegal orders for years. Delaying required reviews, denying legitimate bonuses, altering policy documents to make it appear like the benefits didn't exist. But when federal investigators put her in a room and carefully explained that benefit fraud was a serious felony, her loyalty to Daniel evaporated instantly. "He told me it was just temporary," she sobbed. "He said we'd catch up on all the payments next quarter, but next quarter never came." She had kept secret records, detailed secret records. Every single time Daniel had instructed her to deny a legitimate benefit claim. Every email where he'd told her to find a reason to avoid paying what they legally owed. 7 years of comprehensive evidence. Written proof that the theft was completely intentional. The federal investigators had enough for serious criminal charges now. Daniel's expensive lawyer started talking settlement immediately. But the government wasn't interested in settlements. They were interested in justice. And justice was coming, whether Daniel wanted it or not. The check arrived on a Tuesday morning. Not just my original $18,847, the full amount plus interest, penalties, and federal damages. $31,423.19. I stared at that number for a very long time. It was more money than I'd ever seen in one check. But it wasn't really about the money anymore. It was about the principle. For 9 long years, they'd made me feel like I was asking for charity. Like I should be grateful for whatever scraps they threw my way. Now the federal government was telling them, and me, that I'd been right all along. I deposited the check and returned to work. My new job, where people said please and thank you and actually meant it. That afternoon, I received a call from my lawyer. Grace, you should know, you're not the only one getting a check. They're sending out payments to 47 employees. Some of them are getting significantly more than you are. 47 people. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in stolen benefits. I'd thought I was fighting for myself personally. It turns out I'd been fighting for everyone. The checks kept arriving throughout the following weeks. Lisa received hers, $23,000. Mike from shipping got $15,000. Even employees who'd quit years ago were tracked down and properly compensated. The company was forced to establish a comprehensive victim compensation fund. Every employee who'd been denied benefits over the past 7 years was entitled to full restitution. The local newspaper picked up the story. Federal investigation reveals systematic benefit fraud at local company. I wasn't named in the article, but I didn't need to be. I knew exactly what I'd accomplished. The comments section was filled with current and former employees sharing their own stories. People I'd never met talking about bonuses they'd been denied, reviews that never happened, promises that were systematically broken. I realized something important. I hadn't just exposed Daniel Reed personally. I'd given voice to dozens of people who thought they were completely powerless. That felt better than any check could. But the story wasn't over yet. Daniel was still fighting the charges, still claiming he was the victim of some kind of misunderstanding. He was about to learn that the federal government doesn't misunderstand felonies. Daniel's resignation came on a Friday. Not a graceful retirement with a gold watch and a comfortable pension. A forced resignation with lawyers and severance negotiations and public shame. The board of directors had finally seen enough. 7 years of federal violations, hundreds of thousands in stolen benefits, criminal charges pending. Even his golf buddies couldn't protect him anymore. But the real twist came when they tried to give him a substantial severance package. 6 months' pay, continued health insurance, comprehensive non-disclosure agreements. The federal investigators blocked it completely. Mr. Reed's severance is considered proceeds from criminal activity, they explained. It will be held pending resolution of federal charges. No golden parachute, no quiet, dignified exit. Just public disgrace and the very real possibility of federal prison. I watched the news coverage from my new office. Former executive faces federal charges in benefits fraud case. There was Daniel, walking out of the courthouse with his expensive lawyers, refusing to answer reporters' questions. He looked smaller somehow, older, defeated. I didn't feel sorry for him. You don't get to steal from people for 7 years and then claim sympathy when you finally get caught. 6 months later, I was invited to a mediation session between Meridian and the remaining affected employees. I wasn't sure why they wanted me there. My case was completely resolved. I had my money and my new job, but my lawyer explained, "You were the catalyst. They want your input on the settlement structure." The mediation was held in a conference room downtown. Lawyers everywhere. Current employees, former employees, union representatives. I sat quietly in the back, observing the proceedings. The company was trying to minimize their liability. The employees wanted maximum compensation. I was asked to speak about the documentation process, how I'd gathered evidence, what red flags other employees should watch for. After my presentation, a well-dressed woman approached me, professional, confident, but not in a corporate way. "I'm Sarah Chen," she said. "I run supply chain operations for Morrison Logistics. I've been watching how you handled this entire situation." She handed me her business card. "We're expanding our compliance department, looking for someone who understands how systems can be abused and how to prevent it." I wasn't looking for another job, but I was curious. What kind of work exactly? Internal auditing, employee advocacy, making sure our people get what they're legally owed. That same week, Daniel's lawyers made me an offer I couldn't have imagined. A settlement, a substantial one, but with serious strings attached. They wanted me to sign a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement. No talking to reporters, no discussing the case, no disparaging comments about Daniel or the company. They were offering $50,000 to keep me permanently quiet. I forwarded the offer to the Department of Labor investigators. Attempting to silence a federal witness, the agent said when he called me back. That's obstruction of justice. They just made their situation much worse. What should I do? Nothing. We'll handle it. 2 days later, Daniel's lawyers were facing additional federal charges. I didn't want his money. I wanted his acknowledgement that what he'd done was wrong. But more than that, I wanted other employees to know they didn't have to stay silent. You don't gag someone after robbing them. You apologize. Daniel Reed was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The Department of Labor froze Meridian's entire retirement plan structure pending a complete audit. Every employee, current and former, had their 401k statements reviewed. Every bonus calculation was rechecked. The final tally was staggering: $847,000 in stolen benefits over 7 years. I received a second check, an additional $9,200 in penalties and interest. My total compensation was now over $40,000. But the real victory was watching my former coworkers get what they deserved. Lisa used her settlement to buy a house. Mike paid off his kids' student loans. People were rebuilding their financial futures with money that had always belonged to them. Daniel tried one last desperate move. His lawyers filed a motion claiming the federal government was overreaching, that the company had acted in good faith. The judge's response was swift and brutal. 7 years of systematic fraud does not constitute good faith. Motion denied. Daniel Reed was running out of friends, running out of options, and running out of time. The federal sentencing hearing was scheduled for next month. The message came through LinkedIn on a random Tuesday. Grace, it's Kara from the old summer intern program. I've been following your story in the news. Would love to catch up. Kara Williams. I remembered her. Bright kid, eager to learn, asked thoughtful questions. Now she was director of operations at TechFlow Logistics, a startup that was apparently taking the industry by storm. We met for coffee. She'd grown into her confidence, but she still had that eager energy I remembered. You taught me something important, she said. You showed me that doing the right thing matters more than keeping the peace. I was just trying to survive. No, you were leading, even when nobody was following. She told me about TechFlow. Employee-owned, profit-sharing, complete transparency in benefit structures. We're expanding into the East Coast market. I need someone who understands operations but also understands people. Someone who knows what happens when companies forget their values. It was an intriguing offer, but I was still processing everything that had happened. Think about it, she said. No pressure. But we could use someone like you. The formal interview was unlike anything I'd experienced. Instead of trying to impress them, I found myself being completely honest about everything. The good, the bad, the lessons I'd learned from 9 years of systematic mistreatment. We don't want someone who's never been tested, the CEO said. We want someone who's been through the fire and came out stronger. I presented a strategy based on everything I'd learned: how to build employee trust, how to create transparent systems, how to prevent the kind of abuse I'd experienced. They offered me the job before I left the building. Senior Director of Employee Relations, $150,000 base salary. Performance bonuses tied to employee satisfaction metrics. Stock options. It was more money than I'd ever imagined making, but more than that, it was a chance to build something better. To create the kind of workplace I'd always wished Meridian could be. I signed the contract that afternoon. For the first time in years, I was excited about going to work. Daniel's sentencing made the local news. 18 months in federal prison, $200,000 in restitution, 5 years probation. His business reputation was destroyed. The Regional Supply Chain Association expelled him. His golf club revoked his membership. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, he'd been the one deciding who deserved what. Now a federal judge was making that decision about him. Some of my former coworkers reached out after the sentencing. 3 of them asked about opportunities at TechFlow. I interviewed them fairly. Not out of kindness, but because they were good at their jobs. I hired 2 of them. On their first day, I called a team meeting. We do things differently here, I said. You show up, you work hard, you tell the truth, you treat people with respect. We clear on that? Yes, ma'am? Good, because if you're looking for a place where lying and cheating are rewarded, you're in the wrong building. They got the message. 2 years later, I was sitting in my office when a junior analyst knocked on my door nervously. "I wasn't sure if I should give this to you," she said, holding a piece of paper like it might explode. "What is it?" "A complaint. About you. Says you were too direct in yesterday's budget meeting." I read the complaint carefully. Someone thought I'd been unnecessarily harsh when I questioned a vendor contract that didn't make financial sense. I signed the bottom, acknowledged, no change needed. The analyst looked surprised. "That's it? You're not going to investigate or change anything?" "That's it. I'm not here to be anyone's friend. I'm here to make sure this company does right by its people." She left, looking puzzled, and I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the city skyline through my window. Daniel Reed was somewhere out there, probably still telling people that his conviction was a misunderstanding, that he was the real victim in the story. I didn't think about him much anymore. He'd taught me something valuable, though he'd never meant to. He'd taught me that quiet doesn't mean powerless, that being overlooked doesn't mean being forgotten, that patience can be a weapon when used correctly. And most importantly, he'd taught me that sometimes the people who say you don't deserve something are the exact people whose opinion doesn't matter. I smiled just once and got back to work. Funny how things work out when you refuse to stay silent.